I've been in Pompton for close to 60 years at this point. Not quite, but almost. Pompton Lakes was and still is a very small town. It's a very close-knit town. We are a blue-collar town. The lakes are a very big part of Pompton Lakes. It's actually two river systems that surround the town, and these are, let's say, man-made lakes. They've just been, the river is widened. There were, I think, 5 lakes that we would use when I was growing up as a teen. It was great because each little neighborhood would go to their own lake. You had swimming and diving, you learned to swim. They had games, badminton, just a tremendous amount of recreation. I can remember walking to the lakes with my girlfriend, her mom, and her friends, and they would have their beach chairs and they would bring picnic baskets, and we would go by about 10 in the morning and stay till about 4 in the afternoon when the moms would pack up to go home and make dinner for the dads. At the end of the summer, it was really fun because there was a big competition at the biggest lake of all the different lakes, and it would be swimming competition and diving competitions and synchronized swimming, and it was just a really nice experience growing up here. Opening day of fishing was always big. You'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, don't know why, because the fish would still be there at 11 o'clock in the morning, but it was a big day, opening day of fishing. And yeah, I think people would eat what they caught. They still. A lot of people, when I moved here, there was still Dupont as a factory working, and artistic weaving was another factory that was working. So a lot of the people in the town worked in town too. So Dupont has been going on as long as Dupont has been. But I guess it didn't really come to the forefront until technology got better and we had a better understanding of pollution, pollutants, and what it was doing to the water, to the ecology, to the river system, the fish, everything around, and then all of a sudden it just went like crazy. Back in the early days of Dupont, it was not even Dupont, there was a small blasting cap company. I think its name was Lansing. So Dupont itself is between the towns of Pompton Lakes and Wanacue. It's a huge, huge piece of property. So I think it was Lansing was the company that had it maybe just after the Civil War or near that time. And what Dupont was making then, or Lansing, was blasting caps for ammunition. When Dupont bought it, it expanded its operations between Wanacue and Pompton. Eventually, Wanacue closed down and everything was only out of Pompton. It was really force generated by World War I and World War II because they were in the business of munitions. So I can remember, as far as, I'm going to say World War II, we had an old congregant at church, and back in the 50s through probably up into the maybe early 70s, as I said, the majority of people in town worked for Dupont or artistic weaving. And he worked, when he got out of the service, for Dupont. And he used to tell stories of how the military would come, and when they were working on certain munitions that were not functioning, they would be walked out to the back of the property, which is big, and told to dump it, dig it, or drop it into the ravine. Dupont itself is in a valley, I guess we could say, or a ravine. The Wanacue River runs through it, so you can go back there for ages and never see anything. I think personally one of the reasons that Dupont is not built today, let's say, is that there isn't anybody that wants to put a shovel, let alone a backhoe, in any of that property, because everything was just, okay, dig a hole, put that stuff in it, and we're done. Walked away, and that was the end of it. So who's going to be the first person that's going to say, sure, I'll go back there with a backhoe and start digging stuff up? days we didn't really know much, even like back definitely in 20s, 30s, 40s. We had no idea what the pollutants were. Only became known, I would say, possibly in the maybe late 60s, definitely the 70s into the 80s. By the 90s, people were well aware of what pollution was doing to water and the environment. And so the lakes were closed. So that was a shame. There was no more swimming, no more fishing. Signs were all over the place. So it wasn't a question of whether you would like to, you just weren't allowed to. Wow. Everyone was really sad because, I mean, we are Pompton Lakes, so we are a lake community, and that's a large part of the community itself. It was definitely a gathering place. And it came at a time also when communities were starting to change. Pompton Lakes is a town with a main street and a couple of other little streets off of it. And into the 70s and 80s, as the malls were starting to be built, Pompton itself started to decline because people were going to the malls instead of the town. So between the lakes being closed and the town on a kind of a slow demise, it was really sad for the whole town. Dupont did do is they came in and they dredged large parts of the Wanacue in the Dupont property itself. This sounds terrible, but there is a stream, I think even on the map, it's called the Acid Brook, because that's what it was. A lot of the runoff would go into this small area, and it leads to Pompton Lake itself. So they cleaned up the Acid Brook. They built new walls around it, remediated the whole area, carried that down to Pompton Lakes, dredged that for, probably at least a quarter of the lake, put in new soil, put in new plantings, and that's been there for years now, years and years. There is the area around Dupont that comes off Cannonball, Colfax, Barber Drive, that area. They call that the plume, and that's where they have, like, almost all the houses there have mitigation systems in them. And all it is a pipe that runs from their basement outside, and that's it.